been a fantastic week for our footy club, and I've already done it, but I want to hopefully, this is national, thank the media for their support throughout the week, for the support they've given our footy club, and also the crowd that's come along. I think it was 42,500. I've just had a chat to the players. It sounded like 50,000 when we really needed it. Chris McDermott and Graham Corns in the room beforehand with the guys that represented 20 years ago. Chris's speech was full of emotion and absolutely appropriate, what he said. And in the end, the sort of new generation, if you like, played their role as well. So it's been a pretty good night for the Adelaide Footy Club. So just like to make that point to our supporters who are driving home at the moment.
You often talk, Neil, about milestone games, not spurring players on too much once you get out there. It doesn't mean too much if it's someone's 200th or something. But was tonight a bit different in that regard, given the emotion, like you said, with Chris McDermott and a few others?
No, not. Tonight is different. Tonight was about where our footy club started. It's about some history. It's about people who leave legacy to your footy club and our responsibility. So it's bigger than an individual 200 game or 300 game performance. It's much bigger. And it's much more meaningful because of the way this club was started, the SANFL, and what it represents in this state and the influence it can have. So that's much more involved and complex than someone playing 300 games, which is important. Don't get me wrong, and it's important, but this is a different situation.
Neil, who recognised what had to be done at half time, particularly the way Hawthorn had so many players slipping away when they went forward, and that didn't happen in the second half?
Yeah, I just thought in the second half, Michelangelo, our capacity to put more pressure back on them, to test their defence with our ball movement, to be a bit more aggressive with our ball movement, improved. I thought we were too easy to play against. It was a bit too much one-way traffic their way. When they were very slick when they got the ball, and even though I thought we defended reasonably well, we didn't actually put that offensive pressure back on them. And we spoke about that at half-time. We sort of recognised it going in before half-time as a match committee, and the players knew it as well. And I think that was our conditioning, our level of fitness, and our capacity just to readjust at half-time and be more aggressive and offensive with our ball movement was significant.
One of the other significant adjustments, giving more of that ruck time to McKernan. He seems more suited to that now rather than playing forward.
Yeah, well, he was very good. He was very good tonight when you consider the importance of the game, big stage, quality opposition for a second game player to perform like he did. He'll get a lot of confidence out of that. Not that he needs confidence, but he'll start to understand that he can play at this level. He was good in the ruck, but I still think he can play a big role up forward. I mean, what he's developing, what you saw tonight, was some flexibility forward in the ruck, which is going to be important in this year's competition with the way the new rules are.
Just on those new rules, Neil, I mean, towards the end of the game, maybe it was just us thinking this, but there seemed to be quite a few more players cramping up late in the game. Is that just maybe a one-off tonight, or is that maybe reflective of the new rule and the substitution and so forth?
No, I think Ian, if you look back at the start of any season, round 1s and 2, that you'll see that's a typical response. I mean, our guys are in fantastic shape, and they played hard, but that's, as I said, I think that's a typical response you see early in the season. Once it settles down and you really get strong match conditioning, you won't see as much as that.
What did losing Paul Clusher do here?
Well, it took a quality player out of our forward line and also limited a little bit in our midfield. We just hope that it's not a really serious shoulder injury, because Jason's had a really good pre-season and he's a class player, Jason Paul Clusher. But we're able to cover for him reasonably well tonight. But it's hard to cover that sort of class on a long-term basis, so we keep our fingers crossed.
Would it have been a big difference at it being the old system? Would it have been 3v4 on the bench for it?
Well, yeah, and I think that's been one of the pluses of the new rule, Michelangelo, is that it's remained 21 versus 21 in the 3 games that I've seen. And I think that's a big plus for the AFL, because that's been one of the reasons for doing it. And I know they've copped a lot of criticism, and there still needs to be more information to have a look at some games. But you'd have to say at the moment, in terms of the fairness factor, it's been pretty good. It's worked really well. I mean, I was glad we were able to do it tonight to keep the numbers even.
Neil, from your perspective, and the young players in particular, had to show some resolve and Phil Davis's job on Lance Franklin certainly stood out. What were your thoughts and comments about his game?
About Phil Davis's? Well, we know the quality of Phil. He stood. We spoke about that during the week in our press conference. He stood Pavlik before. Like he stood some of the very good forwards in AFL, and he's done a reasonable job. Tonight just adds a bit more experience to his repertoire, and I mean a lot of it is, guys and ladies. It's about team defence. Okay, so it's not just the individual one-on-one. It's about how the ball's coming in and the pressure on the ball up the field. And if that drops off, well, I don't care who's on Franklin. He's going to get some easy ball. So it is recognition to Phil, but also recognition to what's happening around the ball and the pressure on the ball carrier.
Was Scott Stevens in that role?
Sorry?
Scott Stevens in was the key in that role to back up.
Yeah, and Ben Rutten, and we spoke about that, and even Andy Otten if we needed to better go down, and he had to go down there for a period of time tonight.
Scott seemed to read it better than anyone else in terms of when to chop it off.
Yeah, no, Scott Stevens is a class defender. He's an underestimated player in the AFL, Scott Stevens. I mean, both ends of the ground, I might add there. He kicked 6 goals out here against Collingwood in the final. People forget that. People forget how good a player Scott Stevens is.
What's your take on the newcomers to the club tonight, Richard Tambling and Brody Smith?
I was really pleased with Richard. I like what I saw there. Brody Smith, the longer the game went, I mean, he looked really comfortable, and that was a top level game of AFL footy tonight. So Brody should sleep really well tonight, and be pleased with himself. McKernan was spoken about.
When would have you brought Brody on if you'd had no issue with poor pleasure?
When?
Yeah, when would have you brought him on?
I'm not sure.
So you had no pre-plan as to when to bring him on?
No. I mean, it's we didn't. We certainly wouldn't. We wouldn't have brought him on before half time. But then it's going to be a real judgment call, And from an injury point of view, Michael Ange, you're going to roll the dice on that, aren't you? No matter what the state of the game, because injury can happen any time. So that's always going to be a judgment call. And in the end, I can't get judged on that tonight because I didn't have to make a decision in the end. It was made for me. Was
the call to give him the best because it allowed him to sit and watch the game rather than be caught into it immediately?
No, I just thought that it would be. He's got some flexibility of where he can play, and just with our setup that we had tonight, we knew that whenever we used him, we still had enough flexibility on the ground to cover off on a range of areas. So he ended up being a perfect sub for us, no matter when we used him. So he just gave us that little bit of flexibility. Now, that can change from week to week. I noticed they used 3 big guys tonight. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure if you've spoken to Alistair yet. Okay. It'll be interesting to see, how he felt using the 3 bigger guys.
How challenging was it to work out, particularly in that first half, Rioli and Burgoyne, who to put on and how to cover them?
No, we went in with a fairly definite plan there. I've got a lot of respect for both of those players. Sean Burgoyne in particular is a seasoned, hardened AFL class player, particularly around stoppages, and so we were mindful of both of those players.
What do you say to Patrick Dangerfield in your debrief after tonight's game? Obviously a very quiet first half, but then exploded in the second.
Yeah, Patrick's. We all know Patrick's capacity to compete for the ball, Zach, is unquestioned. The thing I like about Patrick at the moment, he's making a real effort to be more offensive in what he does, and that's going to take some time because he's probably spent his whole career just winning the footy, winning contested ball and being very, very good at it. Whereas now there'll be times when we need him to run the space quickly to receive the ball, which is still being a competitive player, but it's not a natural movement for him at the moment. He's getting better and better. He's becoming much more efficient in his execution, either by hand or foot. But he brings some great qualities to the game. I know, we talk about a new era starting to emerge and people looking for their favourite players, and Patrick will be one of those because of the way he plays the game. And a Rory Sloane will be similar.
Was there a slightly different role for the captain tonight? He seemed to spend a little bit more time across half forward.
We changed our forward line setup just before half time. He did spend some more time. Nathan did spend some more time forward rather than up the field, but that was done specifically for our whole forward line.